Welcome back to the Black Rose PDX podcast. Today our guest is Andre Middleton. You may know him as the executive director of Friends of Noise, or you may know him from his other roles with KBOO, as well as the Regional Arts and Culture Council. He's a big mover and shaker in Portland, doing a lot of stuff in the art community and opening up doors for young ones to get their break in the production industry. And so without further ado, let's get it started. So we have Andre Middleton here. He's one of the movers and shakers of Portland, and just how's everything going with you?
Stephen, thank you. It's going okay. My pantry is stocked. I got a full tank of gas in my car, my motorcycle. I still need to mow the lawn though, so even the little things of our daily lives still have to happen. Obviously, I've got family across the country. I got people in New York. I got people in Arizona. I've got so trying to keep tabs with them. Got people in Northern California. So trying to keep tabs with people. Right now, a large part of my daily practice for the last week has been just checking in with a lot of people and checking in with myself and making sure that I am not overwhelmed by thoughts that are unproductive.
Yeah. That's really the big thing. It's one, make sure you don't get sick, but don't stress yourself out to the point where you start getting sick. Especially in like we're on the cusp of allergy season too.
Yeah.
So for those, my girlfriend has really bad allergies. I used to have bad allergies, but I guess I've grown accustomed to it up here. But she's been, for the past couple years, she's been getting hit really hard. And so like, end of March, April, May, like those are always really tough times for her.
And that's something I appreciate you bringing it up, in that a lot of people forget with all of the novel coronavirus is that people or other sicknesses are happening as a normal course of everyday life.
Yeah.
People, right. They're still going to have allergies. They're still going to get, colds and sniffles. And, the notion that this is going to be over in a month is ridiculous. This is going to be going on for quite some time because it's going to be hard without the test, without having adequate testing, without having adequate spaces where there's hospitals or clinics to triage and to really assess and ascertain where the vectors are, where people are. This is going to be going on for quite some time. And whatever diseases or inflammations or, I should have taken this, I should have taken that, those things are still happening, and they're going to be intertwined and embedded in this outbreak. So I don't know how to separate them. I see someone sneeze, I'm like, yo, dude, watch yourself, and and you're right. It could just be because of hay fever. It has nothing to do with coronavirus. But how do we know that without having the proper testing?
Yeah, very true. It's one of those things where I start to appreciate like the value in health education and little things like that can kind of prevent the worst case scenario. What can you do, and what can you do to sort of like prevent, like decrease your chances of catching something and making the situation worse for you, because it's just like when we're talking about like hygiene, and when we're talking about really kind of keeping your teeth, the little things you could do are just like flossing your teeth at least once or twice a week, and then brushing your teeth twice a day, and those things can prevent you from getting a root canal. Those can prevent you from doing all these different things. But understanding the essentially how crucial it is, that goes down to just health education, where people might know it, but people don't think that it's that serious.
Right.
until you're put in a situation where you have to do it because it is that serious.
Oh, true. I'll admit, I got 4 root canals, and not that my mom didn't have a toothbrush in the house, not that there wasn't toothpaste back then. It might have been Aqua Fresh or something or another. But you're right. At When I was at that impressionable age, my parents did not really drill into me, Andre, if you don't do this now, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars in pain in the future. Now, granted, what kid can, process that in a way that's going to have a real impact on them? But you're right. There are things that hopefully as adults, based upon our lived and learned experience, that we can accept without having to have empirical data right in front of us.
Yeah.
Where kids need that empirical data. So it's interesting to see how this outbreak, how this health crisis maybe will have an impact on people's behaviors in the future.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. And so, kind of circling back, what what do you do? you know, like, like, because I know you from like a lot of different like areas,
Uh-huh.
both on forums and in person and in different organizations. But like, what do you do?
Well, my title, I've got 2 jobs right now. One job is a job, and the other job is my life's work. So, my life's work is to be the executive director of a nonprofit called Friends of Noise. I started Friends of Noise with several friends and associates about 3 years ago, and our mission is to provide. Our mission is to provide healthy spaces and development for creative youth by producing professional development workshops for teens, by producing all-age concerts and arts events, and by creating on-ramps into an economy or arts economy that sees young people as valuable assets. Basically, we teach kids how to put on concerts and how to run sound and how to do lights and
Okay.
how to read contracts. We do not teach kids how to make music. There are lots of other programs, whether it's, School of Rock or, high school band or, Montevilla Guitar Studio that teaches young people how to make music. But once kids learn how to make music, how do they become the producers of that music? How are they putting on their own concerts? How are they networking with other youth artists to create lineups? So that's a big portion of what we do. The second thing that we do is that we create these concerts in tandem with them. So we have a network of art galleries, Portland Parks and Recreation, small venues, church basements that allow us to bring in our own gear, that's PA systems, microphones, lights, so that young people can produce their own concerts in these safe spaces where alcohol is not present. And then the last thing we do is that once some youth artists have shown promise and have shown a work ethic and have shown great talent, we go about booking them for other people, such as Mercy Corps would do a big fundraiser, and we've been supplying them youth musicians to perform at the fundraiser.
Oh wow.
We also have a live event sound services. So if my teenagers who run sound at all of our concerts can make a punk show sound good or make a hip hop sound good, they can also do that for a wedding. They can also do that for a garden party. They can also do that for a fundraiser. So we've been renting out our gear on the caveat that you hire our youth sound engineers to run that gear to make your event sound great.
Okay.
And those 3 things combined have created a bit of an ecosystem where kids are learning how to do it, they get practice to do it, and then they get paid to do it. And that's been a really good on-ramp, or dare I say pipeline, for a lot of kids who often don't get access to these resources. So we focus on communities of color, we focus on women, and we focus on people who don't have the connections or the network or the nepotism to get them into these spaces because they know somebody.
Wow. Yeah. That's that's really good stuff that you guys are doing because as I'm thinking right now, I'm thinking about all the hurdles that I've had in my sort of creative journey to get where I'm at. And, one, you have to find a way to learn how to find a way to learn how to use it. Then you actually need the practice using it. And then once you actually get that practice, you need to figure out how to actually get a job using it. And
Right,
so and
right.
so for me, it's always been difficult because I have YouTube videos and really the access to sort of the information and I have the time to practice it. But it's really how do you make that come full circle to where you could use that skill to not only help others but also put money in your pocket.
And the truth of the matter is, and I appreciate that, Stephen, but another part of it is that so many young people from our community, they never even learn how all those things fit together. You
Yeah.
know, we've been conditioned to just be consumers.
Yep.
Hey, go to the store and buy these pair of shoes or buy these headphones or buy whatever. Our young people never get to see the factory. They never get to see the marketing meeting. They never get to see the algorithm. That we've been conditioned to be consumers, to buy, and when things run out, to buy it again. So that's been a big part of Friends of Noise is how are we pulling back the curtain? And you're right, teaching them about the system, giving them opportunities to practice working within that system, and then giving them the means and tools to profit from that system.
Yeah.
And that's how they will become their own producers in the future. That's how they'll become people who are employing other people or employing themselves so that we're not completely at the whim or at the, vulnerable to the whims of the master class, the whims of the so-called bosses.
Yeah, yeah, and that's such a crucial thing to do because quite often we all know people that we grew up with in our neighborhoods that can either like sing, can dance, can do all these things that should be on TV right now, that should be, hosting all these different parties and making a living for themselves, but they're not because they haven't had access and they haven't had that exposure.
Yeah.
Yet, Jimmy from the suburbs is over there making a killing with barely any talent at all and making it by with very little.
Right, because his parents gave him access to a laptop that was connected to the Wi-Fi,
Yeah.
that was connected to the net. Where we've got many people in our community who are literally sitting today, as we speak, sitting outside a public library, boosting on their Wi-Fi because they don't have internet at home.
Yeah.
They don't have access to the net. So you're absolutely right. It's often a question of access, not a question of means.
Yep. Yep. And it's for me being like not being from Portland and getting more and more involved in sort of like the creative community and everything that Portland has to offer. I'm slowly finding that more and more things like this, where they become more initiatives and more like, personal passions become opportunities for other people, and so it's just, it's something that I haven't seen too much in the Bay Area, haven't seen a lot in LA. And it's just, it's good to be in this sort of time where we have sort of a resurgence of community driven initiatives like this.
Oh, thank you. And to be honest, I'm seeing this across a variety of sectors. You look at someone like Stephen Green and what he's been doing with Pitch Black,
Hmm.
or when you look at what they're doing over at Mudbone, when you look at the resurgence of, hey, we need to patronize our Black and brown restaurants, not just during the month of August, but all year round, so that we are giving them access to a community and access to funds to keep them sustainable. It's been great to see a resurgence of that focus and that intent over the last couple of years because, like I said, for me, I grew up in New York City where I saw the power of the Jewish Hasidic community in patronizing their own. I saw the power of the Italian, of Little Italy, and them patronizing their own, if only to get them to a place where other people notice them. So you would find Black and Asian people going to an Italian restaurant, where you would go to a Chinatown because Chinatown was made for them by them, and they support each other to they reach their critical mass. But then at some point, you've got Jewish people going to Chinatown for Christmas dinner every year. So how are we doing that for our community as well? How are we saying, listen, this is not about excluding other cultures. It's not about ignoring other people, but how are we really investing in ourselves till we get the strength and sustainability and then the notice of other communities who will start to patronize us as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's always like, I always hate to like compare. Well, I've never been apt to like compare one community to the next, but looking at that as sort of a template of what we could be doing, or what we could, or a template of opportunities and a blueprint for what to follow, at least to start off with, is always something that kind of has been in the back of my mind. And for me in particular, in terms of like trying to figure out a creative journey for myself, really try to mimic what other people have done and what other people have been successful doing. And things always tend to change because our lives are always different. But there are tried and true things that actually work. Despite certain situations, and it's just a matter of really coming up with a plan, and then building a community around that plan, and then just sticking to it regardless of Corona season. It's something that like you kind of have to have faith in.
Oh, I completely agree with that. And you're right. There are plenty of examples of building those models and building those networks, and then having those networks support the community. I'm going to go back to Stephen Green and Pitch Black again. It's a very simple concept, and it's been done in many different ways around the world. Hey, let's all pay in and buy in to a pool of money that's basically aggregating our resources. Then let's support some people who have put in the initiative and energy to impress us and to share what their dreams are with us. And then we give them that money so that they can go out and pursue those dreams, increase their capital, increase their value, and then we see them return and reinvest in the community by participating in Pitch Black again in the future. That's what banks are. Banks were literally invented by people who said, hey, I can't afford to buy a combine for my farm. Hey, let's pool our resources together. We buy one combine, but we share it amongst several farms. That's all that a bank is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once we realize that we can do this, that we can share resources, we can be collaborative instead of competitive. I'll be honest, I think that's one of the primary reasons why African American wealth has not been able to explode in ways that other cultures have, is because we've been, due to slavery, due to scarcity paradigm, due to loss of family and the trauma that has impacted upon us, we are so competitive. I got to get mine first. And I'm seeing that change. Don't get me wrong. I'm seeing that change. I'm seeing a lot of people say, hey, how are we collaborating? This podcast is an example. You said, hey, I want to start a podcast. And who are my first subjects going to be? My first people I talk to? People I know. People already in my network.
Yep.
We need to do more of this because we can't be rats in a cage, and that suits their purposes as far as dominant culture, for us to be sniping at us and to be and for us to be competing against each other. The more that we are willing to collaborate, the better. As an example of that, when Friends of Noise started, one of the first things we did was buy a PA, and that PA was used at our concerts. Well, about a year into what we were doing, I started loaning out that PA to predominantly people of color so that they can do what they needed to do instead of having to pay someone else. So whether it was with the White Noise Project, whether it was local DJs like Vanport, whether it was other nonprofits like the IPRC, I've been loaning out our equipment with the caveat that they have to often or sometimes pay a youth sound engineer to run that equipment. But we've been doing that as a means of how we're building up and uplifting other members of our community so that they will get the resources and the capacity to pay for this equipment at some point in the future. We need to do more stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, just talking about the power of just having that asset that that is able to create opportunities for other people, for other organizations and entities. You know, just that simple thing of having an asset is just speaks volumes because people don't really think about it like that. You know, people think about, oh, okay, I need to get a car because I need to drive someplace. Maybe I could give some people a ride. I need to get a computer so I can do my work. But people don't think about like investing in those ways to where you could actually use that asset to scale a business. By doing loans, by doing all these things, or instilling that certain people have to operate that so that they get that experience, but also get the job done. Like that's.
But no, I don't claim credit. I got lucky. I bought this gear, and in the spring of 2018, someone from the IRCO, the Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're doing a fundraiser, and we made a mistake and did not rent the sound gear needed to support the fundraiser. Do you know anybody that we can get gear from?" And I said, "You can get it from me." And that was our first client. And unfortunately, due to the coronavirus, we lost 3 gigs in the last week that were paid clients that were the direct result of that first gig that we did back in 2018.
Oh, wow.
Mercy Corps was doing an event in East Portland. It was a mural reveal. Someone painted a mural. It was community based. They asked me, "Hey, Andre," or not me, but Friends of Noise, "can you supply us with the sound system and 2 youth artists that could perform at this event?" And I said, "Sure." And that was a paid event.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not. Hopefully, it's postponed. But that's without advertising. I have not advertised at all. Maybe we have a note on our website, but that's all been from word of mouth. Mm-hmm. It's all been from people hearing about us and seeing what we do. Once we advertise, watch out. But right now, our growth has been by just doing good work.
Okay.
We let our work speak for itself.
Yeah, and so you mentioned like how has the coronavirus really affected what you guys are doing?
To be honest, it's been devastating, even on the short term, and I'm afraid to think about what it's going to look like 6 months from now.
Yeah.
We've lost, like I said, 3 gigs that were paid for, because people can't congregate. People can't come together. We haven't done a concert. Also, I had 3 concerts scheduled through May that were run by young people for young people that I was basically loaning space to and loaning equipment to. And all 3 of those concerts have been postponed, if not canceled outright.
Yeah.
Our main product or our main program is bringing young people together, showing them their collective power, and having them produce events for their community. And right now, we can't do that.
Yeah,
we can't do that.
Yeah,
I got a grant from RAC, a project grant where we were going to go into a low-income housing community and teach their kids how to dance, how to rap, and how to make beats. And our goal was to do that over the spring so that by summertime, they could perform at community centers, at parks in their community. And right now that's all on hold because the low-income housing center sent out an email just yesterday saying the community room and all activities are now closed. We're advising that all people that live here all stay within their individual townhouses and apartments and not congregate in the community spaces.
Yeah, that's as I start to like keep following everything, initially they were just like, okay, kids can't go to school, can't can't do these, so it's going to cause strain on the family. But really, it's, a lot of the other stuff, a lot of the extracurriculars that kids are doing to also get that foundational learning. That's what I feel like is really taking a hit, is that they don't have the opportunity to explore and grow in those crucial years that they have. And so if this grows to being 6 months, that's 6 months of growth that they just lose.
Yes, and it'll be interesting to see once the testing regime is fully implemented how widespread the virus is. Obviously, young people can be carriers without being asymptomatic.
Yeah.
Obviously, young people can get the disease and ride it out because their immune system isn't compromised.
Yep.
But because they can be carriers, we don't want them sharing between each other and then bringing it home to where then they are maybe infecting their parents or their grandparents.
Yeah.
And that's a real consideration. So while it's a shame that they will not be able to have that social interaction that is teaching them so much about how to be a citizen, how to be a friend, how to be a community member, hopefully tools like what we're using right now, their internet, their phones, computers, Zoom, Google Hangouts, just to name a few, will be ways that they can continue that level of interaction in a more positive way. But that's an experiment that we're literally in, that we don't know what the outcome may be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's time will tell. Time will tell. But I want to see, one of the things that I've always been curious about is how did you get started?
I got started because I became a teacher for the blind back in 2004. And I'm going to even go back further than that. I got started on this path because my mom was a special ed teacher, and she used to make me be a chaperone on her school trips.
Okay.
And while I wasn't thrilled to do it back then, I can admit that it had an impact on me in understanding my privilege and feeding a desire to give back. Fast forward to 2011, and I got a job at our local cable access station. I was always an AV geek, so I'd always been making videos, and I love technology. So I was honored to get a job at our local cable access station in helping people share their stories and share their narratives. And I got a lot of pleasure out of that, to the degree that I started side hustling and asking my bosses at the cable access station if I could do more community engagement, if I can get more people to come to the station and use the tools of media to share their story, to share their narrative, and to bring their communities onto the channel. That led me to working for the local regional arts and culture council as a member of their community engagement team. And on that team, my task was to share grant opportunities and share creative opportunities and share networking opportunities. And it was in that job, that I was tasked with producing a music panel called The Happening, which was basically bringing musicians and music industry together to talk about how RAC can better support, or the Regional Arts and Culture Council, to better support independent musicians that are not part of a union or are not part of the symphony. And the biggest thing that people wanted to talk about at that particular event was the lack of all ages spaces. Because while this event happened in 2015, there was a very popular all ages club called Backspace that had closed down in October of 2014. And people were really hurting over the lack of a community space where young people can do poetry, they can rap, they can play music, they can be seen by each other. So myself and the cohort of people that we were meeting with just started thinking, how do we get this ball rolling? What can we do differently to make this more sustainable, considering how over the course of the last 10 years, there are a variety of all ages spaces that ended up succumbing to market forces
Yeah.
that could not, because they couldn't sell alcohol, couldn't keep the doors open. So we really thought, how do we do something differently? How do we change the paradigm? So the first thing we did was that we did an asset mapping of the music community to make sure that we weren't being redundant.
Okay.
And that helped us figure out where was an empty space, where was the vacuum, where was the spot that we could occupy because no one else was doing it. That led to us figuring out these three spaces. Right now, like I said, there are lots of kids all over the country who are learning how to play guitar or learning how to play the drums, but no one is teaching them about how to put on a show, or how to make merch, or how to go on a tour. They're expected to learn that the day that they turn 21, because that's when they can start paying for alcohol, and that's when people see them as a valuable asset to their music ecosystem. We were determined to say, how do we instill value in these kids when they're 13, 14, and 15, so that they will refuse to pay for nothing, to play for nothing, that they refuse to play for exposure, because they can say, nah, man, I've been getting paid for Friends of Noise for the past 5 years. Why would I take a step back and play for you for nothing?
Yeah.
So that's a big part of how we got started.
Yeah, and that's a lot of stuff that I wish I would have had access to, growing up, or at least going through my thing, because it's really about, like, one, every kid wants to be a freelancer if they're in the arts. They want to control their own schedule, but they also need to know what price margins are. They need to understand, that you could get paid to do what you're doing, but if you're not making enough, then you got to get another job. And then you got to play with that dynamic of, making money off of your passion, but not making enough. So then you got to get a job that you hate just to continue doing what you're doing,
Or how do we find that middle ground? You're right. There are actors and musicians have been waiters and cooks and servers and bartenders since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
There's a level of balance, and to some degree, how do we maintain that balance is in not just signing in the bottom line for some contract where, 50 cents on the dollar that of everything that you sell goes to a label,
Yeah.
Like I said, more young people want to be entrepreneurs. They want to do it themselves. How do we give them the tools to do that in a way where it's sustainable? Because, while people will point to the invention of MP3s and file sharing as the reason why the music industry has changed, it would have been something else if that hadn't happened the case.
Yeah.
Streaming was on the road. Streaming could have been it, or a big virus could be it. So the notion that, we can't have control over our destiny, and that we have to trust in the rich and the powerful and the 1% to guide our economy and to make decisions on our behalf is not fair and it's not accurate.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'll admit, and I'll say this right here in front of everybody. I hope the continued decentralization and the continued, what's the word I'm looking for, breakup or demonopolization of industries is a result of what's happening with the coronavirus.
Yeah.
We have to have more people growing food in their own backyard, so we don't need to have to be trucked in. Maybe I never eat another banana again because I can't grow bananas in my backyard. So be it. I love bananas, but why should we be dependent on bananas being shipped up from South America using buses, using trains, using ships and boats? So in that context, if we can get more young kids putting on concerts in their homes, in their basements, in their communities, and not having to go to a downtown arts district, or not to have to go to one specific building, I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And so kind of wrap up. Are there any projects or anything that we should know about coming up? Is there any sort of remote events happening? any sort of artists we should look out for?
Hmm.
Um, you
Hmm.
know,
Well, first, let me say, please go visit our Instagram page at Friends
okay,
of Noise.
okay,
Um, you're going to find a lot of youth artists who frequent that page and have links to that page. So that's a great way of saying to people, hey, if you want to find who are youth artists that we mess with, that's a good place to start. Um, as far as projects, right now we're hoping, and I'm going to knock on wood, knock, 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 that that June might be a date or it might be a time where things are getting kind of back to normal. Um, I'll be honest. I don't think it will be, but right now
yeah,
we're collaborating with another nonprofit called City Repair, and we are planning on putting on a youth summit that will have 3 or 4 youth activists that are talking about their journeys. We're going to have youth poets. We're going to have hopefully 20 nonprofits like Planned Parenthood, like the ACLU, like Momentum Alliance, like Mudbone, who will share what they do with over 200 kids who are activated and interested, but how they can be a participant in making our city and region a better place. Like I said, who knows if that'll happen, but if it does happen, that'll be happening on June 6th with the location to be determined. Soon after that, Juneteenth is going to be happening. We're talking with Beyond Black, with Gentrification is Weird, and other organizations are producing a wonderful Juneteenth activity out in Gresham at Vance Park, which is on 182nd off of Stark. If that comes together, there'll be music, there'll be vendors, there'll be resources for the community. So we hope that that may still happen as well. Maybe PDX Pop Now might still be happening in August. We've had a presence there for the last 3 years where we've supplied youth artists to perform there. Right now, that's as far out as I think we're willing to look. Is next summer as knock on wood hopeful, but we'll see.
yeah, yeah. It's just only time will tell, because it's really. I feel like if this stuff would have started happening probably in like mid May, things would just be awry right now, because this is the time where
Yeah.
people kind of come out their shells. The sun is out, the weather is nice. This is where the economy starts to really boom, especially in Portland, and so it's God willing, things start to die down and people feel more comfortable going outside after everything just blows over. But we'll see. It's these are interesting times. These are those things. These are those blips in history books that we're going
Yes, they
through
are.
right now.
Yes, they are. Well, Stephen, forgive me. I didn't ask about you, and I understand that you're interviewing me for your podcast. But how are you doing? How is this all impacting you?
It's yeah, yeah. So I lost 3 contracts right now. I would say I lost one contract, which would have set me set me pretty good for like the next couple of months with this contract, and so I lost that directly because they had to cancel the event,
Right.
and so it was a quick project that they had to get done, and then because I'm back into conventions and stuff, I no conventions or anything, and
Oh
so
yeah.
and so not only am I like missing out on like money, but I'm missing out on, really valuable exposure. Especially right now since I'm like releasing an augmented reality book app, and I'm releasing an app, and really it's one of those things where I get a lot of like subscribers from people seeing the work in person and then playing around with it, either getting something or at least getting on my subscriber list.
Right.
And so just that interaction is uh it's really hard to kind of quantify that with a price. And so,
It
um,
will be.
for me, I do a lot of it gives me an excuse to do a lot more live streaming and a lot more like remote stuff, and really kind of sharing of the process online. And and but yeah, I'm glad that this hasn't happened like further down the road. That way I can adapt to it as I'm like still coming up with the plan. But it's
Yeah.
it's definitely been tough. you know.
Adapt or die. Adapt or die. You're
Yeah,
absolutely right.
you know.
Adapt or die.
Like
Um,
right now it's sort of grant season, you know. So like,
it
you
is. Oh, I've been writing grants like
you know,
crazy.
like grant season. So it's you know, the silver lining is that, you know, it forces me to focus on, you know, like the rat grant that I'm doing for like this AR app,
Good.
and a few other sort of projects that like I really just have to sit down and just like, you know, put the pen to the paper.
Yes, you do. Put the pen to the paper.
Yep, it's exactly.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't be about it. Yeah, don't talk about it. Be about it. So listen, thank you so much for having me.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely.
I've been a fan of yours since we met back at BCC Brown Holidays. Um, but no, seriously, you are you're destined for greatness, even if it's only within our community.
Hey, you know, that's
And that's saying a lot. So I really appreciate you and your efforts. And you know how to get a hold of me. Reach out to me anytime. I'm honored to be a resource for you.
oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I will definitely hit you up because I'm in the AR space now.
All
So
right,
yeah, so it's in terms of adding both animation, video, and music to books, like actual physical books, and so there's a lot of applications with it, and so we'll definitely connect because
all
uh,
right,
you know it creates a lot of opportunities for people to expand their idea of what a book is.
great. Appreciate you, bro.
Oh yeah, definitely. So yep, thank you for the time and appreciate it, and I'll let you know when we post it and all that stuff. Again, I want to give another shout out to the Soul District Business Association and Flossin Media for helping me put this on. I'm your host, Stephen Christian. I mixed and mastered this podcast. I also did all the interviews. And if you see any of the stuff on YouTube, I put all that stuff together as well. With all the social distancing things right now, I'm producing this right out of my home studio. So if you have a chance, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Medium at PDX Black Rose, which is PDX BLACKROSE. And if you're on Patreon, hit us up on there. We would love your support. If you don't do anything else, definitely rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. And on top of that, be sure to share this with your friends. The purpose of this podcast is to highlight the movers and shakers in Portland that are doing things in the Black community. And by supporting this podcast, you're supporting the community as a whole. So with that being said, thank you for your time, and I'll catch you on the flip side. The intro song is brought to you by Andy Stokes, and the outro song is brought to you by Spring Gang from Epidemic Sound.